Good evening and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues, a conversation of ideas on issues that are changing India. Tonight we're looking at a dramatic last 10 days, the withdrawal of a so-called criminal ordinance, symbolically on Mahatma Gandhi's birth anniversary, also the conviction of 2 former chief ministers, and a landmark Supreme Court judgment which for the first time gives Indian voters the right to choose none of the above in an election. What does this actually mean for Indian politics? Are we ushering in a new era? Are these the first signs of the green shoots of change? Joining me tonight for this dialogue, I'm joined by Gopal Gandhi, former governor of West Bengal, former diplomat. Thank you for coming in, sir. Also Dr S Y Quraishi, former Chief Election Commissioner of India. I'm also joined by Dr Rajeev Gowda, professor at the IIM Bangalore and representing the Congress, and from the BJP, Olympic medalist and former colonel in the Indian Army, Colonel Rajyavardhan Singh Rathore. Thank you all for coming in. Mr. Gopal Gandhi, you've been a keen observer of politics when you were serving as governor, when you were a diplomat as well, and now your perspective as somebody who's talked so much about the need to clean not just politics but our citizenry on the impact of these decisions.
I must thank you for having mentioned the 3 incidents, one could call them. Each of them has something in common. The withdrawal of the proposed ordinance came after an indication that the President had certain misgivings about it. The conviction of former chief ministers is a legal step. And the third is also a legal step emanating from the Supreme Court of India. All these 3 have happened as a result of the initiatives of what may be called constitutional authorities, as opposed to mainstream bodies of elected representatives. Yes, the President is of course elected, but his is the finial in the architecture of the Constitution of India. The country has warmed to these 3 steps, which is indicative of the fact that the country reposes great faith today in constitutional authorities. I am not suggesting that its faith in elected representatives has evaporated. It has not. But it has taken a back seat. Today, there is no denying that people's faith in constitutional authorities, in bodies that are headed and operated by individuals who are appointed to those offices, with the President's position being a unique position. That is a very important fact. The people's confidence in the Election Commission is obvious. It doesn't have to be stated. Its confidence in the processes of the election as monitored and mentored by the Election Commission is very strong. Its confidence in the elected representatives is nowhere near as strong. Its confidence in the judiciary is very strong. And I'm very glad we have today a former senior colonel in the army. Its confidence in the armed forces is very strong. So what does all this mean? In a living, vibrant, the largest democracy of the world, why is it that the people of India are looking to non-elected bodies for what may be called political reassurance? This is just a question I put on the table.
And it's interesting, of course, that we have 2 unusual politicians, but they still come into electoral democracy in a sense, so that's an interesting trend. But Dr. Quraishi, I wanted to bring you in because I know that for you this must have been given you some sense of satisfaction, because I know as Chief Election Commissioner, one issue you felt very strongly about was why the Electoral Reforms Bill had been pending in Parliament for over 20 years. In fact, you had brought up the fact that we're talking about Lokpal, but what about electoral reforms? If we did this, half of what India wants would actually be achieved. Do you feel that we've gone some way towards this, but getting to the crux of it, where political parties don't give tickets actually to candidates with a criminal background, is really what's needed now as the next thrust?
Yeah, quite right. You know, the Election Commission has been demanding these reforms, as you said, for the last 20 years. But the fact that the government was sitting over these proposals, judiciary started coming in. It's good that at least reforms are happening, but it is not the healthiest way that the reforms should come. They should come through Parliament, from the government. When government is not fulfilling its mandate, that is when civil society goes to the Supreme Court And most of the recent reforms in the last 5-10 years have come only from Supreme Court. To start with, the fact that every candidate has to file 2 affidavits giving his criminal cases and financial background. This came from the Supreme Court, and the government was opposing it. All the culmination of all that is what you now see. By admission of those candidates themselves, we know we have 162 MPs who have criminal cases pending against them. It is in their own affidavit. And the fact that money power is going really out of control. The kind of polity that we have is leaving people very disillusioned. And this is a situation when the people's perception about politics and politicians is at the lowest ebb, which I would like to say is very dangerous for democracy. I've often said that you can't love democracy and hate politicians, but that seems to be the situation, which is also dangerous. India has become almost a superpower thanks to good politicians. There are good politicians, but why is it that these good politicians are not keeping the bad ones away? And as Mr. Gandhi rightly said, why is it that the criminal candidates are given ticket in the first place? Sometimes politicians say that it is for the people to reject them, but what about your own responsibility? Why do you give them ticket? And their standard answer is that they are so desperate to win the concept of winnability. They feel whosoever can win the election, even if it is a criminal, must be given the ticket. I dare say that they have not tried the alternative concept. Let them say boldly that they will not give a ticket to a criminal even if they lose the election. I have no doubt in my mind that people will support them.
Colonel Rathore, do you think that can actually happen? You've taken a step into politics. Why did you choose to take that beyond, of course, the fact that you joined at a Narendra Modi rally? Didn't you feel the popular perception, sab neta chor hai, you can't change the system? What can you actually do? You've come from the army, one of India's most trusted institutions, into something which is actually reviled nowadays.
It's very interesting that you asked me these questions, and of course I connect with what Mr. Gandhi had said, that there are institutions that are respected, right? And yet the true institution that actually can make a difference to this country, can actually reach out, has the enormous power to do that, is the one which is not respected. Right? Now, why is the gap? Is because of leadership. And because of leadership, everything can change. And if there's a leadership deficit, then like Mr. Dipankar Gupta says in his book, Revolution from Above, citizens elite must come in to take that role, to occupy that space and bring in that leadership. I mean, and it's so important today when we are sitting on a demographic dividend or a demographic bomb. It could be either way. We have a bulge of population of about 46 crores today, which could be about 60 crores in about 2020.